Welcome back. Happy Sunday to all. It's the Richie Hicks Jr. Sports Podcast, and I am your host, Richie. On this Sunday, I'm going to be diving into my NBA and NHL picks. I'm also going to speak on the morale boosting victory for my New York Yankees over the MLB leading Tampa Bay Rays. I want to talk about what's wrong with the St. Louis Cardinals, as well as basically the heat streak that the Red Sox are on. The Red Sox are climbing in the AL East standings. I want to speak on them, even though I hate that team. I have to give them their due. I want to speak on the immediate fate of the Knicks and Warriors and if they can turn their respective series around. Canelo Alvarez scoring a huge win in Mexico. I want to speak on his legacy and who his next opponent should be. And without further ado, I'm going to start in St. Petersburg, Florida, and I'm going to talk about yesterday's Yankee victory. Before I even get into the results of yesterday's game, I do want to speak on the impatience of Yankee fans and why some of this is truly comical to me. I understand that only being a couple of games over 500 is not necessarily what Yankee fans would expect given the heightened expectations. But I do think it's a little unfair when I look at the negativity amongst Yankee fans all across social media, and I say to myself, number one, the Yankees play in the best division in all of baseball. Number two, a good week, and they can elevate themselves from fifth place to third place. Granted, the season is only in the beginning of May. But if the season were to end today, the Yankees would literally be right on the outside of a wild card. And this is a team that going into yesterday, or rather this weekend series, was missing, I believe, about 7-8 guys. You're talking Giancarlo Stanton, Aaron Judge, Josh Donaldson. Those are three former league MVPs. We're missing Jonathan Loaisiga, who is a huge part of what the Yankees do in the bullpen. They're missing two starters, Luis Severino, Carlos Rodon. So when I think about just how unreasonable some Yankee fans have been, I kind of have to chuckle. And by no means am I saying that the Yankees don't have work to do and that I do have my own reservations and doubts about how far this team can go given the roster, given the situation that a lot of these players have been hurt. Harrison Bader, who just got activated this past weekend, huge, timely hit that ultimately gave the Yankees the win over the Rays. Domingo Germán got pulled. Clay Holmes pitched the eighth. That's been another struggle for the Yankees, finding that for sure closer in the ninth. And I think the way Aaron Boone has been playing it, he's been basing it on matchups. If he feels that Clay Holmes has a better opportunity in the eighth to mow down the important hitters on an opposing roster, that's what he's going to do. It's a far cry from what the Yankees had for so many years with Mariano Rivera, or even at the height of Aroldis Chapman's career before he fell off. Ultimately, I think the point I'm trying to get at is Yankee fans need to chill out. When I look at other divisions around Major League Baseball, the Yankees and their 17 or 18 wins would be essentially in second or in first in some of these divisions. So I do believe that it's more of a credit to how good the American League East is. And at the end of the day, when you're missing as many players as the New York Yankees are, I think they're doing just fine. Just a year ago, the Yankees had one of the best starts in franchise history, only to have it burn out in the second half of the year. And ultimately, they were defeated by their main nemesis, the Houston Astros, a team that they just cannot figure out. But the message here is to all Yankee fans, please chill out. Things are not as bad as they appear. I do want to move it along to another historically winning franchise that's having a very terrible beginning of this year. What is wrong with the St. Louis Cardinals? I'm going to start with them. A lot of things are wrong. Whether it be poor outfield play, whether it be the inability to hit with runners in scoring position, or whether it be the bloated ERA of their starters, it just seems like everything that is not related to Cardinals baseball has been going on early on. And it's been quite the surprise because this is a team, especially in that division, that is usually a shoo-in to win the Central. I also think that if you take it back to last year, I believe that the team was playing with a different kind of joy, having Albert Pujols back and essentially it being his final ride. Of course, he had the historical chase to get to a very elite club, which would be a 700 home run club, which he achieved. They did burn out early in last year's playoffs against the eventual National League champion Philadelphia Phillies. But I believe that this team is just missing a lot of passion. And I also think that this team overestimated, or maybe underestimated rather, Father Time getting in the way of some of their goals. When I look at this roster, it's a bad mix in terms of age and in terms of, just not thinking it through in terms of where some of these players are in their career. I don't see it getting better for the Cardinals this year. I want to make that clear. Another team that's a shoe-in year in and year out to win their division, the Los Angeles Dodgers, are looking more like themselves right now. They got off to a bit of a pedestrian start, and I think many people were probably penciling in the San Diego Padres to win this division. I myself had picked them with the Dodgers. I guess you could say to a level somewhat of a disappointing run, because outside of the shortened COVID season, they have not raised a World Series trophy. And when you think about the funds that they have and the teams that they constantly put on the field, you would expect possibly some more hardware. But I do think that right now the Dodgers are clicking on all cylinders, and they are definitely making a message to an upstart Diamondbacks team, as well as a team that is most people's favorites, the San Diego Padres, that they're going to have to hold off a little. I think the Dodgers are going to be there at the end. And this is probably going to be one of the most entertaining races down the stretch, talking about the National League West. I also want to hit on the Boston Red Sox. This is a team that I would say that most baseball publications had finishing in the bottom two of the American League East. They are currently on an 8-game winning streak. And I got to tip my hat to them because they're finding different ways to win ball games. One thing that I did acknowledge is that the Boston Red Sox offensively can hang with a lot of teams. I think most of us would feel that it was the pitching that was going to get in their way of climbing in the American League East and being a factor. Now, granted, once again, we are in May. Got some news to report. Vita Blue, former AL MVP and 3-time World Series champ, dead at the age of 73. My condolences to his family. That just came across my ESPN feed. Back to the Red Sox. This is going to be a long season. And I think the American League East literally has an opportunity to send 4 teams to the playoffs. Of course, the West, featuring the world champion Houston Astros, a reinvigorated Los Angeles Angels team, Seattle Mariners team that looks like they're slowly, gradually getting it together, looking like the team they were last year. And, of course, my co-host's favorite team, Mike Zappi, the Texas Rangers. All those teams are going to be in playoff contention as the year prolongs. And, of course, health is going to be a massive factor in figuring out who's going to be representing their respective divisions and wild card representation for the playoffs. That we are just in the infancy of the season in the grand scheme of things. And like I said with the Yankees, I'm going to say the same to other fan bases that are a little concerned. There is so much time left. I'm going to move it along to a couple of teams that don't have that much time left. I'm talking about my New York Knicks, as well as my co-host's favorite team, the Golden State Warriors. Going to start it out with my Knicks. Very underwhelming performance in South Beach yesterday. I'm not necessarily upset in the sense of not being able to shoot the ball well. You're going to have days like that. I think what's a more glaring worry to me is that the Knicks just did not match the Miami Heat's intensity during the course of the game. I myself was very critical on the officiating early on, but I'm a fan and I'm sitting on my couch watching this game. If you're in the game, you got to work yourself through those things. And I feel that the Knicks were a little too worried about what the refs were and weren't calling, as opposed to focusing and just taking care of business. Throughout the course of the year, the Knicks have really struggled against defending the 3-ball, and that has been exposed in this series in a big way. Julius Randle, for the most part, a no-show. Emmanuel Quickley is injured right now. I do not know if he will be available for Game 4. And I also think the 3 days off after game 2 benefited the Miami Heat because it gave Jimmy Butler, who has been this postseason's best performer of any roster, time to heal that ankle. It hurts me to say this, and I'm challenging the Knicks. But quite frankly, I don't think the Knicks are going to win this series, and I'm not convinced the Knicks are going to win another playoff game. Of course, I could change my tune if they turn it around and win a big game on the road. They were amongst the teams that were best on the road this year. They have a better road record than at Madison Square Garden. But I do believe allowing game 1 to slip through the cracks is going to come back to bite them. Should this game go 7, this series go 7 rather, yes, I do think the Knicks could win. But it's going to be a tall order to get that back to MSG for a game 7. They've got to win one on the road. And right now, the Heat are a team that's believing. And it's a credit to their coach, Eric Spoelstra. When you look at this roster and take into consideration that 7 of these dudes were not even drafted, it speaks volumes about the system and about the continuity that they have. And believe me, I love Tom Thibodeau. I think he's a gritty coach. But I do take issue with some of his methods. When you're completely out of the game, I do not understand the need to keep your starters in. Those are wasted minutes, not to mention that you risk injury. Empty out the bench if you're getting beat, the same way that you should empty out the bench if you're up by a lot. That's my personal opinion. Back to the injury quickly. I don't necessarily believe that Coach Thibodeau would do what I would want to do. I understand that a lot of people are talking about that they want to see a little more of Grimes. Personally, I would love to see him dust off Derrick Rose. I think Derrick Rose brings an element and an experience to this series that would be much needed. I would like to see Derrick Rose get an opportunity to get back in the rotation before it's too late in the series. I think he could help the Knicks. As the Warriors go, I think they have a better chance of getting back into this series. You know, 30-point beatdown yesterday is nothing to sneeze at. The Lakers were very impressive yesterday. But I do believe that given the championship pedigree of the Warriors, and being that they've been through the battles as a unit together, and Coach Steve Kerr has been there and done that when it comes to these kind of games, these kind of series, I expect them to come out motivated on the road in Los Angeles. That has been their Waterloo, is winning road games. They shook a little bit of that in the Sacramento series. I think it's going to be a little harder to do that against LA, but not impossible. I picked the Lakers to win this series in 7. I'm sticking to my prediction, but I don't think the Warriors are quite dead yet. When you have the Splash Brothers and you have one of the NBA's best defensive players in the league, one of the best enforcers in Draymond Green, it is hard for me to count that team out, and I will not do that. Canelo Alvarez yesterday put on a show for his country's faithful, getting a huge victory last night. And I must say, it wasn't the typical Canelo victory. I feel more that he had to really grind to win yesterday's match. It was impressive in the sense that he never let up. But I've got to give credit to the loser in this fight, John Ryder. He took some of his absolute best headshots, and he was able to keep going. Canelo won convincingly on the judge cards, as he should have. Second round was really a turning point in this fight when Ryder broke his nose. You got to give Ryder credit for going the distance, taking that kind of punishment. But when I think about an aging Canelo, and I think about what's left for him to do in his career, I really hope that for the true fight fans, he gets into the ring with David Benavidez. I think that is the fight that fight fans deserve, and I think it would be a massive pay-per-view draw and possibly fight of the year candidate. And who knows, that could even turn into a trilogy as Canelo winds down his phenomenal career. I hope that's the fight we get. I believe that it's essentially going to be a lot of experience against a lot of skill. Not saying that Canelo lacks on skill. I just think that Benavidez is hungry, and it would be a phenomenal fight for fight fans. I hope we get it. And I hope something similar doesn't happen to when we waited way too long for Mayweather versus Manny Pacquiao. But I do have a feeling that could go that direction. Before I get out of here, I want to hit you guys with my NBA and NHL predictions for today. In the NHL, I'm going with all the home teams. I think the Devils, facing an 0-3 hole, are going to respond and get a big win over the Carolina Hurricanes 3-1. It has taken me a long time to truly believe in the Florida Panthers, even after knocking out the number one seeded, most points getting in NHL history, Boston Bruins team. But I am starting to believe now, and I got them beating the Toronto Maple Leafs 4-2. I've got the Seattle Kraken beating my co-host team, the Dallas Stars, 4-2. In the NBA today, I've got the Suns squaring up that series 2-2, getting a win over the one-seeded Nuggets. And I think the Joel Embiid curse of playing against the Celtics continues. I've got the Celtics winning by 6. I think that's going to be a close game, but I think the Celtics are going to pull away in the fourth quarter. Interesting take, and it might not be the most popular. I think Philadelphia made a mistake bringing Embiid back maybe a game too soon. They had already done their work and stole a game in Boston. I think when a player is not 100%, sometimes his presence can actually be a hindrance to the rest of the team. Now, you're talking about the league's MVP, and you're talking about a tough guy who doesn't want to miss time, and I applaud his will. But sometimes I think organizations have to protect the players from themselves. Now, Doc Rivers, it's been well documented that since winning a championship with the Boston Celtics, has not been able to win another title and has had a bad habit of falling short and falling early. I think this is a very winnable series for Philadelphia. Going in, I felt this was going to be a 7-game series. But after what I've witnessed over the last 2 games, I am changing my tune on that. And I am not sure that Philadelphia is going to win another game in this series. Sometimes the first round actually becomes tougher than the second round, because in the first round, I think better teams are more vulnerable. I think the Celtics have adjusted well to playing playoff basketball. And this is a team that gave the Golden State Warriors a great series last year, getting over their own hump of finally making the NBA Finals with this roster. It looks like Celtics in heat right now. And as a Knicks fan, it pains me to say that, but I am just shooting from the hip and giving my most honest opinion. One final thing that I would like to speak on. Dexter Lawrence took a little less to stay with the New York Giants, and I couldn't be happier. I feel that the Giants are locking up literally the best nose tackle in all of professional football. And it's also more optimism coming in to Giant fans that a potential Saquon Barkley deal can get done. Ultimately, I think Joe Shane is doing the good job, the right job of playing it, whereas he's basing what he thinks Saquon is worth on the market. I also think to a level he's starting to stall out a little. In the event the Giants franchise Saquon Barkley 2 seasons in a row, you're talking roughly $22 million in guarantees just off of signing the tender. Now, granted, he hasn't signed his franchise tender this year just yet. But having said that, I think in the end, if Barkley is healthy this year, even going into next year, if there's another franchise tag done, I still think he gets the bag. I still think, I wouldn't say retire as a Giant, but he plays all his prime years with the New York Giants. You can't fast forward. Let's see, we're in 2023, 24, 25. You can't fast forward to 28 and assume where Barkley's going to be in his career. Running backs have the shortest life expectancy in terms of career in the NFL. And outside of punters and kickers, as my good friend Quinton Moore would say, they are the least valuable position in the league. I am a firm believer that running back by committee is the way. But having said that, I wouldn't be in a big rush to underestimate how important Saquon Barkley is to this team, not just in terms of talent, but in terms of leadership. One final thought on my New York Knicks, and then I'm going to get out of here. Coach Tom Thibodeau needs to put Josh Hart back on the bench. I think Josh Hart brings an energy that the second team needs. What I've noticed, particularly in yesterday's beatdown, is that the New York Knicks on the bench are just lacking energy. Josh Hart brings that. I think that he also has to have the huevos, so to speak, to not be afraid to pull back Julius Randle a little if he's not meeting the intensity that is necessary to win a playoff series. Because one thing I will say and give the Heat credit for, number one, they're out coaching us, and number two, they're out hustling us. But the series is not over, and we will see what happens. I really, more than any other year, would love to see the Knicks make the finals and do the unthinkable, which is actually bring a championship back to New York City, especially because of the fact that it is the 50th anniversary since they did that. And it would be one hell of a story considering that the LA Lakers look like they're in the driver's seat in the Western Conference, even though Denver has the best record and even though the Warriors have the recency of winning more titles. Until next time, I am Richie, and I hope everyone enjoys their Sunday afternoon and be safe out there. Take care.